I'm about to be exposed as a fraud. Dr. Cordelia Whitmore stood in conference room 4B at Edinburgh University, watching her world implode in real time. Dr. Magnus Calloway from Harvard was examining her research synthesis framework, methodology, worth $4.2 million in grants across 17 universities, and asking the one question that made her want to disappear. Who created this extraordinary work? The silence wasn't because no one knew. It was because the creator was holding her breath in the corner, experiencing the most devastating realization of her 34-year-old life. For 12,410 days straight, she had been systematically destroying evidence of her own genius. The mathematical brutality was staggering. Her self-sabotage had cost her $376,000 in lost career progression. But she was about to discover the psychological cost was incalculable. Crash. Her research assistant, Freya Blackstone, slammed her laptop shut and pointed directly at Cordelia. It was Dr. Whitmore. She created everything you're looking at. 23 pairs of eyes turned toward a woman who had perfected the art of invisibility. Dr. Calloway's face lit up with excitement. Dr. Whitmore, this is revolutionary work. I'd like to invite you to keynote at Harvard Medical School. Are you interested? And that's when Cordelia's brain screamed the 5 words that had been murdering her potential for decades. I'm not qualified for this. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to witness is the most dangerous psychological experiment ever conducted. One woman's discovery of a methodology so revolutionary that NASA now uses it for astronaut selection. And why everything the self-help industry has told you about confidence is not just wrong, it's destroying your potential. The silence that followed her response was deafening. Dr. Calloway stared at her with the expression of someone who had just watched Einstein claim he was just good at math. Here was a woman whose synthesis methodology had revolutionized how interdisciplinary research was conducted globally, yet she couldn't accept basic recognition of her own competence. But Freya had reached her breaking point. She pulled up a spreadsheet that would shatter Cordelia's world. Dr. Calloway, let me show you what we're really dealing with here. In the past 3 years, Cordelia has declined 14 opportunities to present her work, rejected 9 international speaking invitations, and removed herself as primary author from 6 papers that were entirely her intellectual property. She's been committing intellectual suicide in real time. The data was devastating. Universities from Oxford to MIT were implementing Cordelia's protocols without knowing her name. Research teams in Tokyo and São Paulo were using her frameworks to bridge gaps between neuroscience and education, between climate science and economics. Her work had become the invisible foundation, supporting breakthrough discoveries across dozens of fields, yet she existed as a ghost in her own success story. I'm just the support person, Cordelia whispered, her voice barely audible. Someone else should present this work, someone more qualified. The cognitive dissonance was so severe, it was physically painful. How could someone whose work was being called revolutionary believe she was just the support person? The answer would lead to the most important discovery in modern psychology. That evening, holding Dr. Calloway's Harvard invitation like evidence of a crime, Cordelia retreated to the only place she could find privacy, the university bathroom. Standing in harsh fluorescent lighting, she tried to reconcile the impossible contradiction between her external achievements and internal narrative. Ring that notification bell, because what happens next reveals the methodology that took her from invisible to internationally recognized in 18 months, and it starts with a question that will change how you see yourself forever. Alone in her Georgian flat that night, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, Cordelia tried to say the words, "I am Dr. Cordelia Whitmore and I am brilliant." The words wouldn't come. Her reflection stared back, a woman who had revolutionized academic research but couldn't accept a compliment. The mathematical reality was brutal and precise. Her systematic self-erasure hadn't just cost her money, it had cost her identity. At $47,000 annually in potential salary progression over 8 years, the direct financial impact was $376,000. But the opportunity cost was immeasurable. At 2:47 a.m., Staring at journals filled with revolutionary ideas she'd never shared, she experienced what she would later call the recognition crisis. She typed the question that would change psychology forever. What if I treated my limiting beliefs like a hypothesis to be tested? The breakthrough hit like lightning. She had been conducting the most important research study of her career without knowing it. She was both the researcher and the subject. The hypothesis she'd been testing for 34 years. Am I capable of extraordinary impact? But here's the discovery that will blow your mind. She had been systematically destroying the very evidence that could answer that question definitively. Every success became proof of luck. Every recognition became evidence of others' generosity. Every breakthrough became confirmation that her team was exceptional while she remained ordinary. She had developed the most sophisticated evidence destruction system in human psychology, a real-time mechanism for converting objective proof of competence into subjective confirmation of inadequacy. And then came the metaphor that would stop her dead in the street and haunt you for the rest of your life. Walking past Edinburgh's ancient university buildings the next evening, it crystallized with devastating clarity. She had been living like a brilliant scientist who discovered the cure for cancer, then hid the formula because she didn't believe she was smart enough to have discovered it. The visual was so precise, it felt like a physical blow. Every piece of evidence was documented, verified, peer-reviewed. Universities worldwide were implementing her discoveries. Researchers were building entire careers on frameworks she had developed, but she'd been withholding her discoveries from the world because she couldn't accept she was their author. This is where everything changes. Born from this insight was the Mirror Manuscript Method, a framework so psychologically explosive it would challenge everything the world believes about confidence and self-worth. The methodology was elegantly simple, yet revolutionary. Limiting. Beliefs aren't permanent truths. They're temporary hypotheses waiting to be tested. But first, let me destroy everything every self-help guru has ever told you. Here's what they get catastrophically wrong. They tell you to believe in yourself or think positive thoughts. They promise that confidence comes from internal conviction, that success requires self-belief, that you must feel worthy before you can achieve worthiness. But belief without evidence is wishful thinking. Positive thoughts without behavioral change are fantasy. Internal conviction without external validation is delusion. The Mirror Manuscript Method works because of one radical insight that turns conventional wisdom upside down. You don't need to believe in yourself. You need to consult your evidence. When challenges arise, and they will, you don't need to maintain belief in your capabilities. You don't need to pump yourself up with affirmations or convince yourself you're worthy. You just need to check your data. This psychological reframe removes the emotional burden of self-conviction and replaces it with objective analysis. Instead of convincing herself she was qualified, Cordelia simply asked, "What would someone conclude about a person with this exact track record?" The answer was undeniable. The Mirror Manuscript Method consists of 3 revolutionary steps. Step 1. Document the contradiction. Instead of trying to feel better about herself, Cordelia began collecting evidence that contradicted her limiting narrative with the same scientific precision she brought to her research. Her first entry was brutal. In its honesty, hypothesis, I'm not qualified for expert recognition. Evidence against. Methodology implemented at 17 universities across 4 continents. Research cited 340% more frequently in peer-reviewed journals. Harvard professor with 30 years experience called approach revolutionary. Publications in Nature. Science and Cell reference my frameworks. Grant success rates increased 180%. At institutions using my protocols. If someone else had this exact track record, what would any rational person conclude about their qualifications? The disconnect was staggering. The evidence suggested someone operating at the highest levels of academic achievement, yet her internal narrative insisted she was just the support person. It was like having a comprehensive database proving Einstein's genius, while Einstein insisted he was just good at arithmetic. Step 2. Construct alternative narratives. Using the contradictory evidence, she wrote alternative identity stories based on objective data rather than emotional interpretation. This wasn't positive thinking or affirmations. This was evidence-based identity reconstruction. Old story. I'm the support person who helps real experts succeed. I'm good at organizing and implementing other people's ideas, but I don't have original insights worth sharing. My role is to make others look brilliant while staying safely in the background. Evidence-based alternative. I'm the creator of methodology that has transformed multiple academic fields and generated millions in research funding. I'm the person universities call when they need breakthrough approaches to complex interdisciplinary challenges. My work has become the foundation for discoveries I may never even hear about. I'm not the support person. I'm the architect whose designs others are building upon. Step 3. Test through behavioral experiments. The radical step. Act from the alternative narrative and document results with scientific objectivity. But the resistance was immediate and vicious. Her limiting narrative fought back with every psychological weapon available. This is arrogance. You're being delusional. You're the support person. That's who you are. Stay in your lane. People will see through you. You'll be exposed as a fraud. The internal battle was so intense it was physically exhausting. Her nervous system had been wired for decades to interpret recognition as danger, visibility as vulnerability, success as a setup for inevitable failure. Instead of trying to change beliefs through affirmations, Cordelia designed behavioral experiments to test her limiting narrative against reality. She would treat her own self-perception like any other scientific hypothesis, subject to testing, verification, and potential falsification. Experiment 1. Glasgow University Lecture. When Glasgow invited her to guest lecture on research methodology, her first instinct was to decline or suggest someone more qualified. Instead, she accepted, despite hands shaking as she prepared slides featuring her own name prominently for the first time in years. The preparation was agony. Every slide felt like an act of hubris. Every citation of her own work felt like self-promotion. Her nervous system interpreted claiming credit for her discoveries as psychological violence. The results were undeniable. 97% of student evaluations rated the lecture as exceptional or transformative. Comments included, "This changed how I think about research entirely. Best methodology lecture I've ever attended, and Professor Whitmore should be teaching this at every university." But her limiting story fought back immediately. They're just being polite. Students always give good evaluations. Anyone could have given that talk. Experiment 2. Journal submission. She submitted a paper to the Journal of Applied Research Methods with herself as the primary author, trembling as she typed her name first, rather than burying it in a list of contributors. The paper was accepted within 6 weeks with minimal revisions, unprecedented speed for a top-tier journal. The editor's response was effusive. "This represents a significant advancement in the field. We're fast-tracking publication and considering it for our annual breakthrough research issue." Her narrative adapted. Lucky timing. They needed content. Any decent researcher could have written this. Experiment 3. International Conference. She submitted her methodology presentation with herself as the featured speaker, rather than suggesting someone else present her work. Result: not just accepted, offered the keynote slot. The conference organizers wrote, "Dr. Whitmore's synthesis methodology represents the kind of paradigm-shifting thinking our field desperately needs." Her story was running out of explanations, 3 independent validations from 3 different sources, all reaching the same conclusion about her capabilities. But here's where most people give up. When evidence contradicts their limiting story so clearly, they must choose between comfort and growth. Cordelia discovered something that made the choice inevitable. Analyzing her experimental data with the same rigor she applied to her research, she noticed something revolutionary. Her limiting belief wasn't protecting her from failure. It was protecting her from the vulnerability of being seen, and that protection had become more dangerous than the vulnerability it was designed to prevent. Every validation triggered an immediate deflection response. Every success became evidence of luck, timing, or other people's generosity. She wasn't afraid of inadequacy. She was afraid of being seen as adequate and having to maintain that standard. The Mirror Manuscript revealed devastating truth. Trying to avoid the vulnerability of recognition had created something far worse: the certainty of never being recognized at all. This discovery led to the mathematical formula that would become legendary in psychology circles: current identity story, plus contradictory evidence, plus alternative narrative construction, plus behavioral testing. Identity transformation. Dr. Calloway's Harvard invitation forced the ultimate test. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Presenting her methodology at Harvard Medical School to 400 of the world's most distinguished minds, her old narrative screamed with unprecedented intensity. "You're not ready. You'll embarrass yourself. You'll be exposed as a fraud in front of the most brilliant minds in the world." But her Mirror Manuscript contained different data, methodology successfully implemented across continents, peer-reviewed validation from multiple independent sources. The very professor who invited her had called her work revolutionary after studying it for months. For the first time in her adult life, Cordelia chose evidence over emotion. March 2024, Harvard Medical School. 400 seats filled with the world's most distinguished academics, Nobel laureates, department heads from prestigious universities, researchers whose work had shaped entire fields of study. Cordelia stood at the podium, her Mirror Manuscript in hand, and opened with words that would become legendary in academic circles. "Good morning. I'm Dr. Cordelia Whitmore, and I'm here to share methodology that has fundamentally changed interdisciplinary research. But first, I want to tell you about the most dangerous experiment I've ever conducted, the one where I discovered that limiting beliefs about ourselves aren't truths. They're just hypotheses waiting to be tested." The audience leaned forward. This wasn't the typical academic presentation filled with dense methodology and statistical analysis. This was something unprecedented, a brilliant mind publicly dissecting its own transformation. She walked them through her personal journey with the same rigor she applied to her research, sharing the Mirror Manuscript methodology with brutal honesty about her own limiting narratives. She displayed her spreadsheets of self-sabotage, her evidence collection protocols, her behavioral experiments. The most powerful moment came when she displayed her transformation metrics. In 18 months since implementing this protocol, publication rate increased 250%, speaking invitations multiplied 400%, research citations grew 180%, grant funding increased 320%. But the most significant change was internal. I went from being unable to accept compliments to owning expertise. Without apology, phones appeared throughout the auditorium, not for distraction but for documentation. Distinguished professors were taking screenshots of her slides, recording her key phrases, leaning over to whisper insights to colleagues. Dr. Patricia Hensworth from Oxford University asked the question that haunted Cordelia for decades. "Dr. Whitmore, this methodology clearly works in your case, but how do we know this isn't temporary confidence that will fade under pressure?" Old Cordelia would have deflected, minimized, or apologized. New Cordelia consulted her evidence. "Dr. Hensworth, that's precisely why the Mirror Manuscript approach works, where other methods fail. Instead of relying on positive thinking or temporary motivation, we're literally rewriting identity stories with documented evidence. The change is sustainable because it's based on objective reality rather than subjective feeling. When challenges arise, and they will, we don't need to maintain belief in ourselves, we simply consult our data." She clicked to her outcome studies. "I've now worked with over 800 professionals using this methodology. 12-month follow-up data shows 89% sustained improvement in professional recognition, 76% increase in career advancement, and most importantly, 94% report that the methodology continues to work under pressure because it's evidence-based rather than emotion-based." Sustained applause filled the auditorium. But more importantly, Cordelia felt something she had never experienced: complete alignment between her internal narrative and external reality. Drop a comment below about a limiting story you've been telling yourself, because what comes next reveals the twist that will change everything you think you know about human potential. But here's where the story takes a turn that will blow your mind and reveal why this methodology is about to change the world. 6 months after Harvard, Cordelia received an email that would rewrite her understanding of human potential forever. The subject line read, "I need your help, desperately." The sender, Dr. Magnus Calloway. Cordelia, I've been using your Mirror Manuscript Method on myself, and I've discovered something that's shaking me to my core. All these years I've been recognizing genius in others while being completely blind to evidence of my own capabilities. I have enough material for a groundbreaking book on transformational education, but I keep telling myself I'm not qualified to write it. The irony is suffocating. I can spot revolutionary thinking in others, but not in myself. Can we talk? The mentor had become the student. The cycle was complete, and it revealed something that would change psychology forever. During their video call, Dr. Calloway revealed his own mirror manuscript, pages documenting 30 years of transformational teaching, thousands of students whose lives he'd changed, innovations in education that had spread globally. Yet he couldn't see himself as an authority worth listening to. "Magnus," Cordelia said, "what would you conclude about someone with your exact track record if they wanted to write a book on education?" The pause was profound. "I'd say they were one of the world's leading experts." "Then why doesn't that apply to you?" That conversation triggered something unprecedented. Dr. Calloway didn't just write his book, he became a co-researcher in expanding the Mirror Manuscript Method. Together, they began studying what they called the recognition epidemic. Brilliant. People systematically blind to their own capabilities. The results were staggering and would reshape psychology forever. They analyzed 250,000 case studies across 6 continents and discovered something that will shock you. 89% of high-achieving professionals suffered from some form of recognition dysfunction, the inability to see evidence of their own extraordinary capabilities. The implications were mind-blowing. How much human potential was being wasted because brilliant minds couldn't see their own brilliance? How many revolutionary discoveries remained locked in private journals? How many world-changing innovations were dismissed as not ready by their own creators? This discovery led to the methodology being implemented by NASA for astronaut psychological preparation, because even rocket scientists suffer from recognition dysfunction. Fortune 500 companies adopted it for executive development. Mayo Clinic and Johns Hopkins integrated it into therapeutic protocols, but the most shocking revelation was yet to come. 2 years after that conference room crisis, Cordelia stood on the same Harvard stage, but this time receiving the Academic Innovation Lifetime Achievement Award, the youngest recipient in the award's 50-year history. Her acceptance speech began with 5 words that brought the audience to tears. "The evidence says I am." She held up her original mirror manuscript, now filled with documented proof of transformation that had reached 250,000 people worldwide. "This journal started with 5 words that nearly destroyed my potential. I'm not qualified for this. Tonight it ends with 5 different words that have changed 250,000 lives. The evidence says I am. But here's the final twist that will change your life forever. I'm issuing a challenge to everyone watching," Cordelia announced. "The recognition epidemic isn't just about academic professionals. It's about brilliant minds everywhere who can't see their own capabilities. Your limiting beliefs about yourself aren't protecting you. They're destroying evidence of your potential in real time." The methodology that began with one woman's crisis had become a global movement. The Mirror Manuscript Method was being taught in schools, implemented in corporations, and used by therapists worldwide. Dr. Calloway's book, The Recognition Revolution: Why Brilliant Minds Go Unrecognized, had become an international bestseller, proving that the student had become the teacher. Here's what the 250,000 transformations revealed, and why this will work for you. Principle 1. You're limiting. Story is data protection. Your brain created limiting narratives to protect you from vulnerability, rejection, and the responsibility that comes with recognition. But that protection system is now destroying evidence of your actual capabilities in real time. Start your Mirror Manuscript by documenting every piece of evidence that contradicts your limiting story. Treat yourself like a research subject whose capabilities you're trying to assess objectively. Principle 2. Evidence beats belief every time. Don't try to believe positive things about yourself. Construct evidence-based alternative narratives using the same rigor you'd apply to any important decision. If someone with your exact track record, achievements, and capabilities walked into your office seeking a role or opportunity, what would you conclude about their qualifications? That conclusion, that's your real story. Principle 3. Transformation requires behavioral testing. Take one action your limiting story says you can't handle. When you succeed and documented evidence shows you will, that success becomes permanent data in your favor. Evidence accumulates over time. Beliefs fluctuate with emotions. Base your identity on data, not feelings. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. But for the 3 million people who watched this video in its first month, the most powerful moment came when they picked up their own journal and wrote their first entry in their own mirror manuscript. Your transformation starts with one question. What evidence are you ignoring? The woman who couldn't say her own name without apologizing had become the architect of the largest recognition revolution in human history. The Mirror Manuscript Method has now transformed over 250,000 lives across 6 continents. NASA uses it for astronaut selection. Harvard Business School teaches it in executive programs. Mayo Clinic integrates it into therapy. Not because it's revolutionary self-help, but because it's applied psychology that actually works when subjected to scientific scrutiny. And it all started with one woman realizing that her limiting beliefs weren't facts. They were just hypotheses waiting to be tested. Tonight, document 3 pieces of evidence that contradict your biggest limiting story. This week, write one alternative narrative based on that evidence. This month, take one action your limiting story says you can't handle. Share your results in the comments below because your breakthrough story might save someone else's potential. Your extraordinary story isn't waiting to be written. It's waiting to be recognized. What evidence are you ignoring? Your mirror manuscript is waiting.